So what does the roadmap for the BBI process look like now? Well, there's two things that are important to note. That first, we understand there will be an implementation committee which might be a little smaller than the steering committee that came up with this report that was validated from the first one. And the function of that implementation committee will be to drive the process along, actualize the report, identify which bills should be done first, and of course which ones will also need to be passed to enact any constitutional amendments that may be passed. That small team may consist of primarily legal minds. Now, another thing that is important to note in the BBI roadmap is not everything that was outlined in the BBI report will go to a referendum or will be subject to that process. In fact, the report does talk about three ways in which it will be actualized. One is constitutional amendments, that is making amendments to the superior law, the supreme law in the country, that is the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Other proposals will be actioned through legislation in Parliament, new laws, or perhaps amendment of already existing laws. And there will be other proposals that will require administrative or policy action that will happen at the executive level or at cabinet level, if you like. So let's take a look at the first one, right? Implementation through constitutional amendment. Well, this one will primarily be focusing on some of those areas that are outlined in the current Constitution 2010. That's Article 255, which lists some of those protected clauses, right? Which touch on Bill of Rights, the independence of judiciary and other constitutional commissions, the functions and composition of Parliament, the objects and the principles, and the structure of devolution. So based on that, these might be some of the areas that would be subjected to a constitutional amendment, that is changing of the supreme law, introduction of the Prime Minister, the two positions of the deputies Prime Ministers, as well as changing the positions of the Cabinet Secretaries to Cabinet Ministers, and then moving them into the legislature, where some of them might in fact be members of Parliament. Here's something else that may be subjected to a constitutional amendment, and that is that of representation in Parliament. Remember, the number of MPs will be from 349 to 360, as well as moving some of those, the county women reps, who will now be moved to the Senate. That will now be at 67 in the BBI proposal, moving up to 94. Here's another proposal that may be subjected to a constitutional amendment. Some say yes, some say no. We'll wait to see what legal minds say. The current basis for, division of revenue is at 15%. The BBI is proposing that moving up to 35%. And finally, also, this one is an important one. Remember, it is proposing the scrapping of the National Police Service and in place the Kenya Police Council that will be chaired by the Cabinet Minister in charge of the Interior. Now, of course, these constitutional amendments could be effected in two ways. One, the parliamentary initiative, which means these would then go through Parliament, and it would be the MPs who would need to pass it in each house by 2/3 of the members of the House. That would then go to the President, who would assent it. But considering the political divisions, which we have just told you about in the story that aired previously by Sam Ogina, maybe that might not be the way to choose. But we do understand they might be thinking of going through a popular initiative, which, as you know, is the collection of signatures, 1 million of them, together with a constitutional amendment bill that has already been annexed in that BBI report. It goes to the county assemblies and then to Parliament and then to a referendum. And, the threshold for the popular initiative is actually much lower, right? They only need a 20% turnout of at least half of the counties and a simple majority of the votes that have been cast. So that is one of the ways of actualizing some of the proposals in the BBI report. Others, this was another one that is important as well, the introduction of a judiciary ombudsman who will now sit in the Judicial Service Commission. Now, here is another way to action some of those proposals in the BBI report, and that is through parliamentary legislation and administrative action. All right? So this is just the normal way of making bills into acts of Parliament that we know of, and some of these may come in through some of those committees in Parliament, the the JLAC, as well as the CIOC, and many others that would then introduce these bills into Parliament. They would be debated, possibly passed, and then assented to. Now, here's an example of some of them that might need some legislation or at least amendment of it. You see this one here, the 4-year holiday for the HELB repayment for students there. There's already a HELB Act 1995 that stipulates the manner of repayment. So for this to be effected, it would just be an amendment of the HELB Act 1995 that is already in existence. The 7-year tax holiday for young entrepreneurs or businesses that are headed by young people might be a tax legislation that may need to be put in place, as well as the issues regarding prompt payment of goods and services. Now, there are some others that may require administrative action. Now, that simply means the Cabinet taking a decision and effecting that policy. For example, we understand that the BBI says it'll speak of establishment of business incubation centers to provide business advisory services to help young people access capital and to show them how to access government contracts. There's also another proposal there, for instance, that would need simple administrative action, which is the proposal to have Huduma centers having desks for giving advice to business persons. Business development experts will be sitting at business desks there, giving advice to young people on how to start and operate their businesses. Here's another one that is a review of a policy. The review of the teacher recruitment policies that is aimed at discouraging the hiring of local teachers to enhance integration, to make sure that Kenyans can work in any part of the country. There is also a proposal to review admission policies to schools to give them a national outlook. Now, some of those are policy and administrative action. So all of this is how the BBI proposals would then start to be effected. And all of that's set to happen in the next couple of months. The key thing is that you start to read that and find a way of making sure that your member of Parliament, your member of National Assembly, your member of the Senate is aware, because that is where this is headed to right now as far as public participation and incorporation of your views. That is the BBI roadmap, looking to how it will be effected in the coming days, weeks, and months. That's our explainer tonight.